All right, folks, here it is. You've been waiting for it. I know many of you have been refreshing your YouTube subscription feed just in case this video shows up. And here it is, finally. Rolex, the bullies, the apologists, the fanboys. You know, I imagine this will be the first of a few videos in which I address this topic. I've actually had several videos in the past that focused on Rolex. And to some degree, you know, I mean, like all of us, a lot of my videos sort of repeat the same territory. But I think the key is, I think that's okay, but coming back to it with new angles and new perceptions and so forth. And not just repeating the exact same thing again and again. Wait, I'm not wearing a watch. What is this about? I gotta put on a watch. I take off my watches when I'm typing, and I was doing some typing because otherwise, you know, they get a little heavy and scraped up. Here it is, the Breitling Blackbird. All right, so yes, Rolex. So I've mentioned a couple times, and I was originally going to do a video that was sort of a response to Simon Crane, and then Purple Haze 5995, and then Ray Kell got involved as well. Simon had made a statement on one of his videos that I took issue with as being ludicrous. Simon had said Rolex is the baseline for any decent collection. And he eventually sort of changed that and said that what he really meant was a high-end collection. So that's a very different thing, like a decent collection versus a high-end. But we'll forgive Simon for the way he was. I mean, come on, Simon. Is a high-end collection, is that what is decent to you? So I wanted to address that a little bit. Simon also half-jokingly mentioned my problem with Rolex, or my so-called problem, as I'd like to say. And I'll get into that as well. And Purple Haze 5995 also had a perspective on Rolex in relationship to luxury, which I'll like to incorporate into this. So I'll start with those, and then I'll go into some of these little nooks and crannies around Rolex. So Simon's quote aside, that was sort of addressed. But that will be something that we come back to, because in a way he's right. In a way, I agree with Simon that Rolex is the baseline for a high-end collection. And Purple Haze said something similar. He drew it out a little bit, where he was talking about people, you know, upper class people that live in luxury, that are into real luxury goods, what the word luxury means. And correct me if I'm not representing your view right, but I think what he was saying is that in a way Rolex is the baseline, the beginning of true luxury. That people that are into high-end watches, that are into, you know, we're talking about people that make multiple six figures, worth decamillionaire type people, and they look down upon, I think this is what Purple Haze said, they look down upon, or they don't take seriously, the Omegas and the Breitlings of the world. So Rolex is sort of like the beginning. And in a previous video, which I'm uploading now as the Driving Ramble, I talked about the traditional or orthodox view of watch collecting. And that it's kind of like a funnel, that there's you throw all the mess in there, but eventually you get to the neck of the funnel, and the neck, that little sphincter part, is Rolex. Rolex is the sphincter of watch collecting. You can quote me on that. It's what brings it all together, and then you're in that thin, narrow line of quote-unquote true luxury. And so we'll talk about that. And this also relates to why, ultimately, like, this channel isn't a true luxury watch channel. And that I'm not even really interested in true luxury watches, at least at this point in my life. I've said that if I was to get a haute horology, I would get a Breguet. That the Type 21 Transatlantique, to me, combines the qualities I like about watches with haute horology, and I kind of, in a way that really is pleasing to me. So Simon mentioned my so-called problem with Rolex, and I want to differentiate three aspects of Rolex. One are the watches themselves. Two is the brand, the Rolex brand, which includes the history and heritage of Rolex. And three are the Rolex fan club, the people that wear Rolex. I have no problem with the watches. I think Rolex makes many very nice watches. They are not my all-time favorite watches. I think that the Submariner is a good example of a watch that I like a lot, but design-wise, to me, it's been surpassed. There are other dive watches, including this one, that I prefer, that I think offer something more beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to myself, understanding that that's subjective. But, I find that as a watchmaker, Rolex is an excellent company. I like their watches. As a brand, they're clearly important. They're horologically central. They are the luxury watch brand. And they are probably not even arguably the most important brand in the history of watchmaking. I have no problem with that. So what does that leave us? Well, the fans. And this was originally about Rolex bullies, Rolex apologists. So let me talk about that. First of all, this is not, what I'm going to say is not, I'm not talking about all fans, all people that wear Rolexes. Part of the issue with Rolex is that they are so popular that they have the largest of everything. They have the largest of serious aficionados, the largest of total jackasses. And I think right here that one of the key problems with Rolex is that they're the watch brand that everybody knows, including people that aren't that into watches, but are into some of the secondary aspects of watch collecting, like the prestige, the status. So you have a lot of people that are like, oh, Rolex, but they don't have a love of watches. What they do is they connect with the status symbol of Rolex. So we could call these Rolex wankers, I think is a term that Simon used, because that's what it is. It's like guys, like young stockbrokers that are like, out to make millions of dollars and don't give a shit about anyone or anything. And they get their Rolex, and they're like, oh, and then they live into that. They live into it as sort of a surrogate for real fulfillment, right? Like any status. That's what status is. Status symbols are surrogates for real fulfillment, right? In the same way that, or it's not the same, but similarly, it's like a trophy wife or a sports car that revs really loud, that when you press on it, it gives that and you're like, yes, I'm manly. And it makes up for whatever other deficits you have in your life. Now, this isn't to say that all love of sports cars is that, but that for a lot of people, they're getting something out of their sports cars that they're not getting in the rest of their life. So if I have a problem with Rolex, it's this. It's very simple. I find it irritating how certain people, I'll say Rolex fanboys, and I'll get into what fanboys are, because there's kind of a definition for what a fanboy is. But when Rolex fanboys, or fangirls, but they're mainly boys, criticize you or assume you're lying when you say you don't like Rolex, or that you like other brands more than Rolex. They either assume that you have bad taste, or they assume that you really love Rolex and you're jealous, or you can't afford Rolex. It's completely ridiculous. And other people do this. It's not just Rolex fans that do this, but I think for a variety of reasons, it's more centered on Rolex by far than any other brand. Partially and largely even because they're the top dog, right? Just like there's more New York Yankees wankers than any other sports team wankers, because the New York Yankees they're the Rolex of baseball, right? They've won more World Series. They have the most storied history. They're not always the best. They're not even, they had a really rough spell, the Yankees, from about throughout the 80s into the mid 90s, and then they got really good again in the mid 90s. And then in the early aughties, they were still very good, but they weren't as good as they were again. So they've kind of gone up and down, and they've always been a good thing. But in a way, I even think the state of the Yankees now, they are a team with lots of old players. They're not one of the best teams in baseball, but they're still a good team. And I think Rolex is kind of like that. They have lots of designs that are old, and they're still good designs, but they're not necessarily the cutting edge of innovation anymore. So again, so a fanboy is somebody who is a fan of a brand or a band or a movie star, a sports team, a watch brand, and they sort of let go of any sense of critical thinking. They assume everything that brand or that sports team does is perfect. There's no questioning of it. And they assume that any criticism towards it is false or disingenuous. It's like they have complete blinders on. And there are a large group of people that will take serious offense to anything critical. It's not even just criticizing Rolex. It's not adoring them. And that's where it becomes a problem. And that's what I don't like. I don't mind people loving Rolex or loving their own favorite brand. But to me, it gets silly if you don't adore Rolex, then clearly there's something wrong with you, or you're lying. And I've actually had that experience, right? I've had this experience multiple times since starting this channel and commenting on other channels. I have people that I get a slew of comments on this channel that going back to some of my oldest videos, that insult me or my videos. Me and all the videos that I mentioned Rolex. It happens like all the time. A recent one even attacked one of my most esteemed longtime viewers, Mr. Snake Roberts, who doesn't participate as much anymore. Snake, what's up with that? You don't love me anymore? Well, we miss you, Snake. We miss your participation. The royal we. I won't mention this person's name. I don't even remember what it was. And I don't want to feed the trolls and give them too much attention. But I banned him from my channel because I just have no tolerance for attacking either myself or people that are here to chat and enjoy talking about watches. Another person, I think it was on Archie's, or I don't know where it was, somebody even claimed that I was lying when I said I preferred the Omega Seamaster to the Submariner. I think that was on one of my older videos. I saw that comment just recently. Every once in a while, it's funny, you'll get for perhaps my fellow YouTubers can relate with this. You get the little notifications up there, and I try to read everything and either at least like it to let you know that I've read it. But every once in a while, I'll get a comment on a video that I did like 7 months ago, and that somebody will be all like outraged, and I'll be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't remember what I said in that video. But this was like that. Somebody was just like, you're so... I don't believe you that you prefer your Seamaster to a Submariner. So to me, that's an issue, and that's just... It's ridiculous, right? I mean, this mentality that one can't possibly actually prefer other watches to Rolex. That's part of the fanboyism. And the wankery is sort of like attacking anyone who disagrees or who isn't a huge fan of Rolex. And so to address Simon's comment about my problem with Rolex, I don't have a problem with Rolex. I don't have a problem, but I will admit I'm a little turned off by the brand. And even maybe by the watches, by the whole image of Rolex. Not the watches themselves, which I like but find not to be my very favorite, but the brand gets tarnished for me because of this vocal minority of fans that are apologists, that are wankers, that are bullies, that go around and attack anyone who says anything about Rolex. And certain people encourage this behavior. I won't. I mean, you know who does. And I do think there are more Rolex bullies or wankers than any other brand, and not just because there's more Rolex fans, but because I think there's a higher percentage, right? And I think that's because of the image of Rolex as the top dog, as the main brand, because they are the market leader, so to speak. it's like you know, it's like the little fish that attach themselves to the whale. People that can't stand on their own, that can't say, this is who I am, this is what I like, these are my tastes, these are my preferences. So they attach themselves to the big guy. And you see this in all tribal behavior. You see this in gangs. It's gang behavior. You have the alpha male, and you have the weaker males that sort of like are there behind him saying, yeah, we'll kick your ass. I filled up my video card there, so I had to delete some videos. But yeah, so the point being that you know, it's not just a Rolex is often not just a status symbol, which in a way, as I said, is a kind of surrogate in and of itself for real fulfillment. It's also a you know, a replacement ego. You wear your watch. I mean, to some degree, all of us probably have. You know, you get, like, I'm wearing this Breitling, and it just feels like, okay, yeah, I feel a little bit more confident. I'm wearing this, like, nice, chunky metal watch, and it feels good on my wrist, right? But Rolex has this sort of added thing. It's almost like you join the Rolex ego. So even if you don't have that sense of confidence in yourself or that sense of well-being, you can just, like, prop yourself up with that Rolex. So, by the way, I just got an email from Gary while I was fiddling about before starting the video again, and he sent a link to a video of a guy who unboxed a Rolex that he bought off eBay, and there was no watch in the box, and it turned out to be a scam. So that happens too, so be careful. He bought it from a zero feedback person on eBay, which of course you'd never do, especially for a $5,000 watch. So yeah, I do think that, you know, on the other hand, there are Omega bullies too. I think we know one of them out there too, who happens to be from a certain country in Europe, but I won't say who's who it is. But you know, people who go around saying, no, you know, Rolex isn't the best brand, this is the best brand, Omega's the best brand, right? Rolex is crap, right? You know, that's kind of silly too. You know, in an early video way back in probably February, I talked about the Omega inferiority complex, and that exists out there too. You know, because Omega is the second. It's not the top dog. It's the second dog. It's of a different tribe, but it's not as powerful of a tribe. And they want to be as powerful, and some of the people that are into Omega want to be as powerful, but they also like being a little different than Rolex. So, I mean, I think that's silly too, and I don't really espouse to that philosophy either. But yeah, I don't really, you know, in the end, it's like one of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts, said something about. I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something about you should always honor and respect your enemies because they help you define who you are by understanding who and what you are not. I don't remember his exact quote. It was probably far more eloquent than that. But, you know, in the end, we want the wankers out there. We want the snobs out there. We want the fanboys so that we can actually... Those of us who are into learning, like defining ourselves, self-defining, so to speak, can do that by seeing, well, I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that, and learning about who you are and how you do things. So yeah, I mean, you know, in the horological world, there are different tribes, different qualities of watches that people focus on to varying degrees, and I started talking about that. In this other video about value structures. So for people that are interested in Rolexes, so much of the value they put into the watch is the name brand. They really attach themselves to the name brand. And I have to say that's a kind of thinking that I don't resonate with. I understand, and I guess I can appreciate to some degree the luxury component, the component that's like about the finest possible things and the status and how expensive it is and all that. I don't at all relate with sort of the machismo, the Rolex machismo about, my watch is better than your watch sucks, oh, your watches are all dog shit. And it's just, I to be honest, I'm finding myself not even wanting to go over to Archie Luxuries anymore, because every time I go there, I'm attacked by these people that they go there so that they can take out their shit on other people. I really think that's what it is. It's like a dog fighting basement. And they like to watch Archie just like vituperate. They like to just attack each other and attack other people. And it's kind of pathetic. Yeah, Rolex bullies, apologists, wankers. I don't really have much more to say than that. I'm sure, feel free to comment on this video and to agree or disagree. Maybe you think that I'm only doing this or saying this because I'm secretly jealous of Rolex, and I really, deep down, I want to be a Rolex wanker too. And I could be if I wanted to be. I don't have a super high-end collection, but I have more than enough to sell off and buy at least one Rolex. See, I could probably buy one. I could probably sell, my 3 Omegas and buy one Submariner. That's probably about what it would cost. And, I would rather have any one of those Seamasters than our Submariner. And that's not me having a problem with Rolex or being jealous. It's very simple. It's very simple. And I'll show you what it is. It's that this watch here, I find this watch to be a more beautiful watch than any Submariner that I've seen. And you can disagree with me, and I'm sure many, if not most of you do, and that's fine. But for me, this watch is going to be on my wrist. And I prefer the look and feel of this watch. I've held a Submariner. It's not that I've never seen one or touched one. They're great watches. They're really nice. But personal taste. And as I admitted, I'm a little turned off by the brand, and I've told you why. And it's everything I've just been talking about for the last 20 minutes. That's why I've been turned off by the brand. If I go to a high, I feel pretty confident in staying within the range that I'm in. I don't feel like I need to go up, quote unquote, in terms of price for quite a while. Someday I might get myself a Breguet, Someday I might get myself a higher end Omega or a really nice Breitling Navitimer. And I'm not opposed to owning a Rolex, but there are people become dumbfounded. They either become dumbfounded or hostile as to why I would pick any of those watches over a Rolex. And it's the same reason. I mean, it's a combination. The main reason is some people like vanilla, some people like strawberry, some people like chocolate. There's different tastes. And I think that would go a long way to helping people accept that not everyone likes the Rolex flavor the best. But the thing is my guess is that the people that are most dumbfounded or hostile, they don't even have taste. They don't even have a sense of aesthetics that they're not choosing Rolex out of loving Rolex. They're choosing Rolex because they want to be the top dog. And they might not feel like the top dog in their life. And so they find ways to be part of other top dogs. They'll be part of, they'll like a sports team that is the top dog, or they'll like Rolex, or they'll try to beat other people at work, or they'll choose a career that involves trying to get one over on other people. And this is a problem. I mean, this is a much larger problem. This is just one little tiny corner of it. But our whole system is built upon this, in that we value competition and winning and monetary wealth over other kinds of wealth, right? Over the wealth of enjoyment of a sunset, or the wealth of enjoyment of friends and family, or the wealth that is the deep satisfaction of creating something, a work of art, or writing a novel. We would rather conquer, have sex with multiple women, and rather than have a real human relationship with one woman, where we accept them fully and they accept us fully, and we go deeply into that relationship, and it tears us apart, and there's heartache, and there's disappointment, and there's bliss, unlike you can ever experience if you just always stay superficial. There's a saying in Zen that you can either dig 100 holes 1 foot deep, or 1 hole 100 feet deep. And I don't think it has to be either or. I think we can, dig 1 hole 50 feet deep, and then 5 or 10 holes 5 or 10 feet deep, right? We can have some diversity in our life too. But until we're able to turn this whole thing around and stop trying to win the world out there, stop trying to get one over on others, stop trying to gain our satisfaction, and really, in a way, ultimately try to stave off death, try to avoid our fears and our sadness with the false power of anger. I mean, that's what one of the videos that I did a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago, and I'm gonna have to redo because I erased it, and because I did it in the car and I want to do it as a sitting down video. I compared the stages of Jedi mastery to watches and life. I talked a little bit about the dark side of the Force. And the dark side is feeding into that anger and hatred, right? It's feeding into that because it has a surrogate power. It's not real power, right? Real power is being able to stand tall within the eye of a storm, to hold your calm, to take it all in and not get swirled into it. False power is that anger and that rage and that hatred. It's going on the Archie Luxury channel in the comments and attacking people. I'm not talking about the joking around. The joking around is one thing, and you can tell the difference if you're awake to such things. Some people joke around and they're raunchy and it's all in fun and games. But other people go on there and they're just angry. They're angry and they go for blood. They don't go for just messing around with you. And to me, 99% of the time, there's a deep hurt underneath that, and it's kind of sad. So this was, I went far off the original topic, but it's all, you see how it's all connected. It's all connected. The wankery, the bullying that's behind that Rolex bullying is really something much deeper, something like about who we are. And it's the world that we've created and that we continue to create because we think somehow that we can win, that we can accumulate enough money, that we can have enough sexual conquests. And I've been referring to the male, the heterosexual male, because it's such a dominant force. There's other variations of this, right? There's a heterosexual female, there's gay male, gay female, there's many different variations, right? I think, I don't want to say we're the worst, but we kind of are, the heterosexual males. We are kind of the worst. At least as far as, it's like Rolex, having the most power, having the largest market share, right? And then it becomes more likely to have an abuse of power. But, yeah, so I nothing wrong with Rolex. They make great watches. But it's okay when some of us aren't in love with Rolex. And if you have a problem with other people not being in love with Rolex, usually there's something deeper going on. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. All right, later. I take off my watches when I'm typing, and I was doing some typing, because otherwise, they get a little heavy and scraped up. Here it is, the Breitling Blackbird. All All right, so yes, Rolex. So I've mentioned a couple times, and I was originally going to do a video that was sort of a response to Simon Crane, and then Purple Haze 5995, and then Ray Kell got involved as well. Simon had made a statement on one of his videos that I took issue with as being ludicrous. Simon had said Rolex is the baseline for any decent collection. And he eventually sort of changed that and said that what he really meant was a high-end collection. So that's a very different thing, like a decent orthodox view of watch collecting. And that it's kind of like a funnel, that there's all the, you throw all the mess in there, but eventually you get to the neck of the funnel, and the neck, that little sphincter part, is Rolex. Rolex is the sphincter of watch collecting. You can quote me on that. It's what brings it all together, and then you're in that thin, narrow line of quote-unquote true luxury. And so we'll talk about that. And this also relates to why, ultimately, like, this channel isn't a true luxury watch channel. And that I'm not even really interested in true luxury watches, at least at this point in my life. I've said that if I was to get a haute horology, I would get a Breguet. That the Type 21 Transatlantic, to me, combines the qualities I like about watches with haute horology, and I kind of, in a way that really is pleasing to me. Out a little bit, where he was talking about people, you know, upper class people that live in luxury, that are into real luxury goods, what the word luxury means. And correct me if I'm not representing your view right, but I think what he was saying is that, in a way, Rolex is the baseline, the beginning of true luxury. That people that are into high-end watches, that are into, you know, we're talking about people that make multiple six figures, worth decamillionaire type people, and they look down upon, I think this is what Purple Haze said, they look down upon, or they don't take seriously, the Omegas and the Breitlings of the world. So Rolex is sort of like the beginning. And in a previous video, which I'm uploading now as the Driving Ramble, I talked about the traditional... Alright folks, here it is. You've been waiting for it. I know many of you have been refreshing your YouTube subscription feed just in case this video shows up. And here it is, finally. Rolex, the bullies, the apologists, the fanboys. You know, I imagine this will be the first of a few videos in which I address this topic. I've actually had several videos in the past that focused on Rolex. And to some degree, you know, I mean, like all of us, a lot of my videos sort of repeat the same territory. But I think the key is, I think that's okay, but coming back to it with new angles and new perceptions and so forth, and not just repeating the exact same thing again and again. Wait, I'm not wearing a watch. What is this about? I gotta put on a watch. I am collection versus a high end, but we'll forgive Simon for the way he was. I mean, come on, Simon. Is a high end collection, is that what is decent to you? So I wanted to address that a little bit. Simon also half-jokingly mentioned my problem with Rolex, or my so-called problem, as I'd like to say. And I'll get into that as well. And Purple Haze 5995 also had a perspective on Rolex in relationship to luxury, which I'll like to incorporate into this. So I'll start with those, and then I'll go into some of these little nooks and crannies around Rolex. So Simon's quote aside, that was sort of addressed. But that will be something that we come back to, because in a way he's right. In a way, I agree with Simon that Rolex is the baseline for a high-end collection. And Purple Haze said something similar. He drew it out.